I think we can go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone. I'm John Nissel, Deputy Director of Operations for Montgomery Parks, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today as we kick off our 4th annual speaker series. Just a few quick housekeeping notes. The session will be recorded and posted to our website for future viewing. We will have a question and answer session immediately following today's presentation. Submit your questions into the Q&A throughout the session, and we'll try to address as many of those questions as we can at the end of the session. But before we get to the presentation, some quick background about Montgomery Parks. We are a department of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, a bi-county agency made up of Prince George's County Parks, Recreation, and Planning Departments, along with Montgomery Planning and Park Departments. Here in Montgomery County, we manage 421 parks spanning 37,000 acres of parkland across the county. We have hundreds of amenities, from trails to lakes to historic sites and athletic facilities. We strive to leverage our parks and open spaces to support physical activity, social connections, civic engagement, and environmental stewardship. It's a fine balance to foster such a variety of purposes in a way that promotes healthy, active lifestyles. Today, we are fortunate to have an expert on this topic to offer insight on how to go about achieving such balance. Michael Wiggins is the Director of Education and Community Relations for Little Island, a new public park in New York City developed on the Hudson River on Pier 54, which was extremely damaged by Hurricane Sandy. A new park has become a fixture of the city's cultural and recreational life. Prior to his role at Little Island, Wiggins served as Director of Education at Baltimore Center Stage, Director of Education and Special Projects at the Urban Arts Partnership, and teaching artist trainer at the Public Theater, among his other roles. He's an alumnus of the New York University Graduate Acting Master of Fine Arts program. And it is my pleasure to join Michael Wiggins for this great presentation on Little Island. Michael, take it away.
Cool, right on. Thanks so much for that kind introduction. Too kind. I was thinking as you were talking, you call me an expert. I think it's there's this thing in as a drama teacher thing where you put the mantle of the expert on the young person, on a student, you know, and you ask them for help. And so I think that it's kind of you to call me an expert. I certainly don't feel like one, but it's good to be put in that spot, and I'm definitely happy to share what I'm learning with the field. So again, in the era of COVID, I'm just looking at myself in a deck here. I can't see anybody that's in the house, so I'm just gonna I'll try to move through the deck. But you know, if there's anything you can always interrupt me. I would love to hear you heckling me from the sidelines. That'll make me feel more grounded. I want people to get a sense of Little Island before we start. And I really want to end up in a space where we have some questions and some conversation, but we put together this deck, so we may as well go through it. You can see a picture here. This is a rendering of the island. It's quite accurate, but this is not a real picture of what Little Island is right now, although it gives you some sense of what the thinking was when people were planning it. A leaf floating on the water is one of the inspirational ideas that I've heard bandied about for the people who made this drawing and ultimately helped us realize this project. We're a unique public project, a unique public park. We're on 13th Street, 14th Street in the West Village. That means if you know New York, that it's a really beautiful neighborhood. It's gone through a lot of changes in the past 20 years, and we're an addition to Hudson River Park, which is 4.5 miles of parkland that was created about 20 years ago in order to conserve and save some of the fish that live in the water. That was the excuse they used to finally be able to think of a way to maximize and develop the West Side that was thinking about people rather than cars. So we're a newest addition to a jewel of a park called Hudson River Park, and I hope you do get to come and visit if you haven't already. So the vision and mission of the park come out of the mind of Mr. Barry Diller. Barry Diller is an entrepreneur, and you can see him pictured here with his wife, Dion von Furstenberg. They're a great couple, philanthropic couple. This couple funds certain things that you probably know, like the High Line, which is across the street from us, and some other things. they made a commitment to this park to keep it for about 20 years, 20 years worth of maintenance. And if you're in the world of parks, you know that maintenance is where projects live and die. I'm sure people are nodding and assenting that maintenance is something that, you know, civilians don't think about, but in a space for a park, that's really where it is. And you can see this quote down here. This is really it. If we did nothing else today, he would say that our job, my job, and the job of my teammates out here was to realize this vision. Mr. Dill said what was in his mind was to build something for the people of New York and for anyone, for everybody, right? For anyone who visits New York, a space that on first sight was dazzling and upon use made people happy. That was the promise that we were charged with delivering on. And I think we did it. And of course, we're gonna have to keep doing it 365 days a year perpetually. So we are where we are right now. Next slide, please. Okay, these are the people that did it. All this stuff is available to you because Google exists now. So now and forever, these answers are available. And I'm just gonna skip through these stones. Heather Wick was the structural design. This is Signe Nielsen. What an amazing human being. This woman had a hand in designing Hudson River Park, had a hand in designing what you see when you go to the High Line, and has designed Little Island. And it is an amazing little jewel box of a park. I heard Signe most recently describe it as a strolling garden. And I wish I'd heard that phrase earlier because it's so hard to talk about it. It was such a simple thing, but you really want to say like, what makes it there? It's a strolling garden. There are so many plantings and they're all so gorgeous that it demands and invites you to take your time to experience it. And experience is what it's about. We'll talk more about that later. Move on to the next slide, please. The construction of Little Island took a long time, but not as long as you might imagine. If we go to the next one, you'll see it in progress here. And I've seen it in cold weather and in hot weather from a wonderful viewpoint, our vantage point to see Little Island from across the street at the Whitney. I can't get as high as these pictures here. I guess these pictures were taken with a drone, but if you're on the Whitney, you can really see Little Island from afar. And you can see that the groups that were involved in it are top of the line companies. If you Google Arup, you know, you'll find out some of the amazing things that they've done. But the pots that Little Island sits on are because of Arup and the work that they did. Fort Miller built those pots, and that's a company that is a New York company upstate. They made those pots. There were some disasters. I think if you go up there, you'll see some pots laid out in the ground at Fort Miller, that, you know, Ozymandias, these huge cracked pots that couldn't quite meet the standard that they finally achieved, which is you have this beautiful thing that's also load bearing. So it's a structural and also a decorative element, which you know, they tell me is something that is not often done and had never been done in this way. And that is a consistent theme amongst the designers and the artists that were involved in this project. Weeks Marine will tell you, we had to do something that had never been done before to build this. The plumber told me that. Next one. Here are those pots that we were talking about. And there's the story of the pots. They came in 2018. It was freezing. I couldn't feel my feet as we watched, but it was exciting to watch them being lowered into the water. Weeks Marine did an amazing job with that. The pots are all unique, individual, and I'm sure there's a computer program that modeled them for us, but they fit together, not like a glove, but they fit together in very interesting ways, and they're beautiful to see from afar. And there's a secret. If you're on staff, you get to go underneath and you can see them. It's quite cathedral-like underneath. Next one. Yeah, I would invite everybody to take Signe's audio tour. This audio tour is fun. It's a great way to visit the island on your own and do this self-guided audio tour. Signe introduced me to the concept of hero trees, which are mature trees. So, you know, we're not waiting for the trees on Little Island to grow. They were chosen. They were chosen specifically for the locations that they were planted in. They were chosen in the conversations about what the future would hold in terms of their weight and whether or not, I believe Signe says that every one of the places where a tree is had to be reconsidered in some kind of way, that they had to examine whether or not that tree, as it grew, if that was the right place for it. And would there have to be structural changes or anything put in place to make sure that that tree survived? Like there was a constant toggle back and forth between, we want this tree, we'd like it here, okay, in 5 years, 10 years. So that's a fascinating thing. But the idea of a hero tree, for me as an artist, because it's less information and more poetic language, is really compelling. This park sprung into being. And there are these beautiful mature trees right from jump, so that we didn't have to wait 3 years for people to say, oh, okay, it's settling into itself. Like this gift could be used immediately. And it is a gift. And I think we should think of Little Island as a gift in the best sense of the word. And in the way that we talk about the idea that when you have a lot, you have a responsibility to give back. And it is a model for that kind of generosity. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, hopefully, in the question and answer. Next. Discover the Island is a pattern we run with everybody. We have some lesson plans that we use. My team has some handouts that will help you discover the island. When you come, look for Duke. He will give you one, and you can explore the island on your own, but we'll discover it in this way together. I'd like to give you some sense of the park that we were talking about. So that's Hudson River Park. That's the construction of it at May 2020. And I'm pointing at my screen because I've, I've forgotten that we're in the area of COVID and on the Zoom, you can't see me, but right in the middle is Pier 55. So we talk about Pier 54, which is the pier that was destroyed. This Pier 55 is that same footprint, only it's turned on a square. So right in the middle of your screen, you'll see Pier 55 juts out just a little bit into the water. It's not a finger pier. Those other ones, those finger piers jut way out. Little Island comes out just a little bit, almost like it's got a bay around it, but it does have these two gangways or these planks, two entrances. One that takes you under so that you get I think the magnificence and beauty of the pots, and then one that's over. They both deliver you to the same spot, right in the middle of our island, which is called the playground. Next slide. So the playground is that large space that you see there, the large beige space in the middle of the green. That is the gathering place. So both those bridges will land you there. And I think there's something evocative about that. This is a gathering place for everyone. This is a place that everyone's invited to. This is the idea of a public square a little bit, not a food court, a public square. A gathering place in which people then can start to make their decision about where they'd like to explore and how they'd like to be on the island. But I think as you're moving through the bridges, there's this sense or this hope because they rise, the island is higher than the shore, that you are leaving something behind, that there's a transformation happening in your body, and we invite you to explore this green space. Next one. Here's a photo of the island. Over the course of the summer, I believe this photo was taken. And you can see the light. The island faces New Jersey. So the sun is setting on the west side of Manhattan. And so when you're on Little Island, if you want to see the sunset, the place to be is the AMPH. This is the Esplanade, which is Hudson River Park's sidewalk. We'll move to the next. Here's that southern entrance that I was talking about that goes under. This is standing on the island looking toward the arch. That arch is where the Titanic, the people who are on the Titanic were supposed to dock there. Of course, they never did. So this is a place that is dropped in the middle of history, not just the Titanic, but of course, this is where the Lenape, the indigenous people that were here before when Manhattan belonged to the Lenape, this was a camping ground. And so you'd have oysters here. This was a way station. It wasn't that there were permanent settlements here, but historians tell us that this was a very fertile island, Manhattan, a green, verdant island. And this coastline is a coastal estuary. So there was a lot of life here. And it was a very smart place for people to camp, for trade, and also just opportunistically gathering food and whatnot. So it's exciting to be in the middle of a historic place. You can see Pier 57 to the right on that picture. That's our North Bridge before the island was finished. I love these photos of before because the shape of the island is so unique and you can really see it here without all the greenery there. Next. This is our amphitheater, which slopes down to the water. Again, it faces New Jersey. Sunsets are gorgeous here. This place, like all of Little Island, it toggles back and forth. It has a different personality during the day than it does at night, right? During the day, it's public space. Anyone can be in here. At night, when we have performances, and this is the only place on the island where we have ticketed performances, and most of those tickets are free or low cost. But this place is sometimes public space, which is like, hang out here, have a sandwich, do whatever you like, just enjoy the vibe. But then around 7 o'clock, it starts to become a managed space. So it's still public space, but it's a venue for a show. So that conversation really happens throughout the island. It is a public space, but then we have programming, and we have a lot of programming, and we have specific curated programs. So of course, we've got our hand, we're shaping the way people are interacting with the space. And so there is this conversation between like, how does a public space function when it is managed, when it has an artistic point of view, or when it's got offerings that are so specific and need that we need to We need to influence people's behavior. We need to figure out how they're moving through the space, et cetera. All the choices are not available to them. And what choices remain, and what choices are we making, and how does it feel? All of that stuff is at play on Little Island all the time, in a way that it might not be in a different kind of park. This is a smaller venue. It's called the GLADE. It is also a formal venue, and that it has, a shape of an an amphitheater. Below that hill, that green sloping hill, you'll see about 70 seats, which are evocative of the same wood that's in the amp, but this is a tinier space. Maybe a pas de deux can happen in here. We put a lot of small musical acts and tap dancing in here. We also had teen night in here with a partnership with The Door. They deal with youth in crisis, LGBTQ youth. We centered youth here in the GLADE every Friday on this beautiful piece of real estate. And they had a show that they would share that involved them sharing the artwork that they created, dance and some theater, but also voguing, et cetera, and all the things that young people are into. Next one. This is our playground, which is, again, the plaza where people enter the space. No matter how you get on a little island, you got two choices. I mean, unless you're arriving by boat, which is not allowed. You're arriving on those bridges. This is where you end up. And then from here, I think you see what's happening. You can't see over the hill. The amp is hidden. So there's lots to discover. I think it really gives you the same sense that you might have if you were, we always forget what it's like when you're a little one. When you're a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, you've got this vantage point that means that there's almost sure to be something up over the hill that you can't see. So your whole life is about discovery. What's over there? What's behind that? Little Island, because of the way it's designed, it's almost this bowl. Adults can get that feeling. So if you're 6 feet tall, you still get that feeling like, what's over there? I wonder what's behind that. And you have to then go and explore, which is something that's going to change the way you feel in the moment. And that is, of course, our mission, to put you in a different space than where you were before, to change you. This is our lawn. It's gorgeous. It breaks my heart that because it is so gorgeous and we're so small, and one of the challenges that we have, one of the learnings that we have with our audience, with our visitors, is that we can't keep the lawn open every day. So we are learning that with our community, that you can have a public park. There's still a lot to access, but if we want to keep it in beautiful condition, then we have to make some sacrifices. Sometimes you can't hang out on the lawn, and you probably can't sled on it over the wintertime, even though I dreamt about it for years. Next. Using art, nature, and community to engage, educate, and employ. I think this is what we sold you. This was the bill of goods that we set for this event. But I would talk most about that. But I think we can only really get to understanding that through dialogue. So I'm just going to skip through these stones, and hopefully something will be revealed. And then when we get to the open space, we can test the idea that we are using art, nature, and community to engage, educate, and employ. I think that we are, and I'm going to talk about some examples. But I definitely want to get into that as a conversation. These are the promises. And my boss, Trish Santini, who I think is a visionary leader, along with Mr. Diller, we talk a lot about making a promise and only articulating promises that we can keep. You say, how do we work? I guess that's one way of describing the way that we work. We work a long time to figure out what promises we can articulate, what we can speak, and then we try to make sure that we deliver on that. And we've been successful so far. It is a conservative way of acting in the world, but it allows for some big flash because there's a lot of just waiting around and saying nothing until you're ready to reveal. And engage, educate, and employ are some verbs that were present in my first job interview. I sat and looked at this project idea and was asked if I wanted to be involved in it and trying to make a case for me being involved in it. And me and my boss came out of that, one of our first conversations, even before I think the gig was offered to me, with the idea that we would be using this park to help engage, educate, and employ people. And that if we focused on that altruistic mission, then a lot of the other stuff would take care of itself. And we often think about it in terms of local, but luckily when we say local, we look at the industry, and the way you think about local means that you can embrace all of New York and New Jersey and probably even beyond. But but engage, educate, and employ is what I come to work to do. To be able to use the resources of this park, the idea of a beautiful public space and everything that goes into making it operate, and saying, all of this is of one piece. Wherever we are taking action, is there a way for us to do good in the world is a question for us. And so engage, educate, and employing people is something that is central. It's in our DNA. And you can see pictures there of some of our happy interns. I love all of them. We have 13 so far, and we're moving into, and 6 fellows. since 2018. We're moving into getting more. Here are some numbers. These things, we're talking a lot about impact with Little Island and what is our impact. And I think that really, in the end, we're going to come down to the idea that the empirical stuff, the numbers are really cool, but Little Island is about experience. And our impact is about shaping people's experience. And we have to keep that ball in the air, art, nature, and community, 365 days a year. So, but I'm proud of a lot of these numbers and overwhelmed by some of them. 12,000 free tickets distributed is a great number. Next. Someone's trying to chat with me, I think, and I can't see it. So if anybody really wants to talk to me, then you can shout it out, hopefully. Photos next. This is just the year. They have captions. So I'll try to read some. This is in the GLADE. You see a little musical app, a gorgeous photo. This would have been sometime over the summer. Next. Little ones playing at the top of the lawn. This is one of our pop-up artists on the left. Actually, both of these are pop-up artists. We have a submissions process called Perform in the Park. I think it's open right now, in which any kind of live performer who is attached to New York, as a, they live here or work here, can apply to get these paying positions, paying opportunities to perform at least twice in the park. So this musician here on the right would have performed in this spot on the overlook, but also performed in a different place over the course of the summer and got paid to do so. I love that egalitarian open submissions process. It really is something that defines part of the way we operate as well. So we're choosing things that come straight out of the community. Here are two photos of teen night that represent, there's flamenco on the left when they had an amazing teacher leading them toward exploring this art form. And then you have the art form that fully belongs to Black and Brown LGBTQ youth. There is some voguing. This is what you call a Kiki Lounge, which would happen on Friday, which is very small, but there's a competitive aspect and there's a lot of joy and love. These two people are competing. One of them will come away with the prize. And in the back, there are some other competitors and people who are really just cheering them on in ways that are delightful, not just for the young people, but the hill would be full of people who had nothing to do with them, but were enjoying the show, which was really just a safe space for youth. Next. Here are older adults in a creative aging workshop that we supported. This is their culminating event. This was also delightful. We often forget that older adults are what we are going to become. And so I am fascinated and really interested in creating or programming creative aging spaces that are fun and that embrace the whole individual. So these people were working with a woman named Nancy Gabor and a gentleman named Paul Bennertz, who are a theater couple. And they have an acting workshop that helps people learn how to tell their own stories. We found them in the community and we supported that workshop and we gave funding to pay those teachers to lead that experience. Then we introduced them to one of our artists in residence groups, Pigpen Theater Company, and they worked together and this was their culmination on Little Island. And we're gonna try to duplicate this in different ways as we move forward, but that is a model for the way we work, supporting something in the community and then figuring out how it can live on Little Island is a pattern. Here's our dance teacher, Stephanie, leading Latin dance. We have regular creative break spaces at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. throughout the week and on Saturdays that people can depend on. So if you live nearby, you know that this is going to happen. And if you see people in the back wearing t-shirts, you'll see that local schools, et cetera, start to take advantage of these spaces because they know they're regular, they're on the regular. And that piece of furniture in the back there is our art cart, which was a specifically bespoke item designed for our park, because branding is everything. When you're trying to change someone's experience, you want to make sure that everything is cohesive. So it's not a trivial thing to make sure that the colors are correct, that the shapes of something really evoke the feelings that you want people to have. Nothing should distract from that forward motion toward the experience that we want the park visitor to have. Here is an installation, a visual art installation that people are looking at. And I believe this one was called Selfie, which I think critiqued our current culture's desire to always look at itself. All right, and here's some happy people on the right who just made a collage with us. And then there are partners at Hudson River Park showing off some live animals. Okay, I think that might be the end of my deck. Thank you. All right, it's been very lonely doing this presentation and I can't wait to hear somebody's voice.
Hey, Michael, it's John.
Hi, John.
Can you hear me? Oh, great.
I can.
What a great presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I hope we could probably, Ojang or Aaron, if we could leave a slide up of the actual park. Well, I think it's good when people ask questions so they can sort of visualize what we're talking about. I have so many questions, but I'm an operations guy, so I'm going to move to the questions from the group, and then I'll save mine for last because I just find this very, very fascinating. So one person said, do you think that more little islands are going to end up around Manhattan in the future? Is there any talk of that or concepts about that?
There are some beautiful pocket parks in New York, and there are people doing amazing work, right? So I think that our park is replicable, or at least aspects of it are replicable, not scalable. I don't think everyone can come up with, let's face it, Spark, is a $250 million investment, right? Capital project. Its design is coming out of the creative minds of some really amazing people. So I don't think Heatherwick is going to go around designing little parks for everybody. That's not going to happen. But the park itself is the people that run it. And the thing that my boss has been working for, and I think the reason they brought on this department first, is that Little Island's about relationships. And so any public space, any park that is clean, any park that is a public park, and his mission is to give people opportunity to have a healthy body, to move through space, to get sunlight, all the things that you were talking about at the beginning, John. That is the mission of the Montgomery Park system. We are not exactly that because we don't really have a sports program or anything. It's not about getting your body to run, but we own that. We study that responsibility of the public parks. And then we say, well, what if you put a little bit of the world that I'm from, art, on top of it, and started thinking about our responsibility is to make sure that every time someone comes, they have a good experience, right? So right now, I think that when I was in the Bronx and we were trying to get a park, success was getting the park built. So the person, you didn't have a park, you just needed that green space. So that was the mission, This place, of course, there's a park here already. You could just open it. It's a beautiful thing. People just use it. But we are accountable for your experience. We want to make sure that every time somebody hits that island, they are changed in a way that is good. I think that we often ask the question, was the thing when we were doing our assessment, was it fun for everyone? Did they have fun? Or did they have joy? Those are our primary questions. The first question we ask coming out of something where we're assessing whether or not we were successful. But I think fundamentally, what we're thinking is that we are accountable in a way that maybe parks that don't have the staffing that we have or don't have that little differential. We're thinking about every time someone comes, we're responsible for their experience. And we've got a visitor experience team that's going to say I see them coming. Oh my God, I think they might have a question. Let me go help. And we're still working on what that means. But when you hit this island, we want you to know that we were thinking of you when we built it. We were thinking of you when we decided what was going to be happening that day. You're invited. And that is our work. So we're building on past work, right? There's a huge field of people who have brought public parks into the 21st century, and we're studying all of that, and we're trying to say what is our differential? And I think that's what it is, because we've been given a gift, and this is a gift. So we have the capacity to be able to say that every visitor's experience is our responsibility.
Michael, that's great. A little follow-up question to that, if I could. How are you capturing the data? I mean, I saw a chart on data, on your numbers are through the charts. I mean, your visitation numbers are amazing. But how are you guys querying and capturing data on the experience? And we struggle with that a lot in Montgomery Parks. I'm sure they do across the nation. But do you guys have a mechanism for doing that?
Yeah, I think we're still learning. I wouldn't say right now that we're great on data collection, but I do think what we have is we're a benefit from our strategy, which is to be as authentic as possible, to make friends, who will tell you the truth. So I came here 3 years before the park opened, and so people say, well, the park's not even open. Like, why would you hire? And what are they doing? What I was doing is making relationships. And so there are people who live in the community who are very aware of what happened in the run up to the building, right? It's not that, and if you look back at the story of the way this park got built, there was absolutely there are questions along the way about whether or not this is the right choice, as there should be in any strong community where there's strong advocates. The job is to test your assumption, right? Is this the right thing, right time, right way? So we made friends with people who I think love this local neighborhood, strong community members who have other things on their resume other than their regular job. They're on the community board, or they're working in one of the business improvement districts, or they're on a block association. People who care about their neighborhood. Those people tell us that we delivered on our promises. And so that is the data that I'm using right now. Of course, we do all the things that normal organization, a smart organization would do. We have a survey that goes out every time we have a performance or an event. We make sure that people are encouraged and invited to take that survey. And we look and we read that data. But this year in this launch, there's a lot of wet work, and we're really in the work. And I've got people who I've been working with for 2-3 years in the community who would tell us straight to our faces if we failed. Or if anything that we did was inauthentic or landed wrong. But right now, they're saying that the promises that we made, we followed through on, we delivered. And the feedback is almost universally positive.
That's great. That's great. Hey, here's an interesting question. Somebody said this is unquestionably a fabulous park. There's no doubt. Given that no expense and no effort was spared to make this the best of the best parks, how is it not a space for the well-to-do?
I love that question.
Well-connected, and how do people access it to visit it? So that may be a barrier.
I love that question, because it goes exactly right to the heart. Those are the smart questions the community advocates were asking right from jump, right? How does this help? You're going to throw a lot of money at something, and no one else can be able to do this way. But the truth is, it's not like that. Little Island is a not-for-profit. We are the stewards of this idea. So there was a lot going on into building this park. I will not deny that. Like it's top of the line everything, right? Signe Nielsen, Heatherwick, all those things. This park did not come cheap. But our job is to build a sustainable project, a sustainable organization, which means that we're not just throwing money at things. The budget for my department is absolutely very reasonable and sustainable, because Mr. Diller has committed to supporting this thing. The Diller von Furstenberg Family Foundation is committed to supporting this idea for 20 years. And so the promise of the programming that we put in place this year is not something that we can just toss away next year, which means that we have to keep delivering on that for the foreseeable future. So we were charged with setting something that was reasonable and sustainable. So what my department is doing is totally doable. The best practices are the things that we started with. You should have a regular arts making opportunity, or a regular opportunity for joy on the calendar to serve local people. That's not hugely expensive. I've got a teaching artist that is paid a decent rate, industry rate, to come in and do a dance workshop once a week. I've got a visual artist who is also trained to do that. Our artists are getting paid, I think, reasonable rates, but nothing out, nothing way outside. We're not bringing in, Beyonce is not performing on this island. The Acro Buffos are performing on this island. Michael McElroy, Broadway, is performing on this island. This is more than a democratic venture. This is a model for how we can, as a people, meet our responsibilities for each other. So the word sustainability is key for the development of what is on the ground now and what we offered this summer. And I think there is something that goes on with our partnerships that pushes back against the idea that this park is not for everyone. So our strongest partnerships are with The Door and with Westbeth. These organizations are very close to each other, and they're in the middle, they're in the West Village. And they're both about 40, 50 years old. So Westbeth is artist housing. It was founded like in 1970. I think they're going on 50 years. They created a space for artists to have affordable housing in New York. We partner with them. That's where the old people acting workshop, those people live there, right? So the park is for them. We partner with the program people who support LGBTQ youth, many of whom are homeless or have dealt with homelessness or been kicked out of high school or did not have a successful academic journey through their high school. They're now at the door, which is a social service agency. We center them on Friday nights and say they're going to own this really gorgeous performance space all summer. So the fact is that everybody deserves beautiful public space. And we're taking this idea of entitlement and turning it on its head. I once worked for someone who told the young people I was working with, they came from a very economically challenged background, that they should be grateful for what they were getting today as they were on Broadway, but that's not how we approach it. Everyone is entitled to this. And so as we built this park, we're thinking about the most marginalized among us. We're thinking about, my department has built a model in which the person at the center is a girl from the housing projects, which are very close nearby to the park, but have been gentrified. Everything is gentrified around them. So there's only one grocery store left that's affordable. But there are thousands of people who live there. We think about a girl who grew up there. She has a creative break to go to with her family on Little Island. Then we might go into her school or to her community organization like Hudson Guild, which serves the housing project. We might go in there and do an arts workshop, which as we have done in the past. She can then, when she gets into high school, she can come and participate maybe in teen night. She can experience, as a performer or as an audience member. Then when she goes off right before college or her first year of college, when she goes to CUNY, she can be an intern. Then she can be a fellow, right? And get paid a little bit more money and work in a department at Little Island. Then she can go back to grad school. Then she come back, take a part-time job for the summer, study some more, and then 10 years, 20 years from now, take my job. That pathway is built out. And in between, she's experiencing shows in the AMP. And when people ask her about how she grew up, she said, I grew up in the housing project, but I had this amazing park that was right nearby. Everybody should have one. You didn't have a public park like that in your neighborhood that offered you an internship and free art classes all the time? Wow, I thought everybody had that.
That's great. That's great. Here's a couple practical questions, Michael. Does the park close at night? Is it lighted, and are dogs allowed in the park? Because I know you talked about turf and saving the turf, and my goodness, we know all about that. Everybody's got, not everybody, but a lot of folks have dogs, and green space is at a premium, especially in New York. So what do they do about that?
So we did timed entry this year, and if you do timed entry at the top, that's better than bringing it later. But timed entry allowed us to manage the park for comfort and for safety. No timed entry right now, and definitely no timed entry whenever it didn't make sense. But we have that ability to do it. So that's how we manage and control for safety. We're still learning about what it feels like, and I think people differ upon when it feels crowded and when it doesn't. But it is a tiny little park. And in the wintertime, it's smarter for us to close a little bit earlier. So we close around 9 o'clock now, we close at 9. And I think that makes sense. The rest of the park stays open till 1 o'clock. But this park is more than a park, it's a little bit of an attraction. And so without programming, because we have high overlooks and it's really, really freezing, it's smarter for us to pull back a little. We will have this week, if you can get up here, on the end of the week, on Friday, I think we'll have some choral singing in the park. So we're still thinking about the kinds of things we can do in the winter. And in terms of dogs, we love them. We love dogs, and service animals are welcome in the park. But no, we do not allow dogs to roam the park as they would on a dog run. There are some dog runs nearby, and we encourage people to go there. But our love for dogs and dog owners is real. But the reality is that it would not allow us to keep the park at the standard in which it must be maintained if we let dogs do what they need to do on Little Island.
No,
I hope that answered the question.
No, that's perfect. That makes a lot of sense. So as you were going through the slides, you pulled up a slide and said, this is our playground, but I saw it was it looked like a shaded structure there. Is there an actual playground?
There is not.
In the park? There is not.
And you are not the only one to ask. I have a brilliant letter from a brilliant 7-year-old that reminded me he was very disappointed that the playground was not a real playground. The playground is supposed to evoke for I think everybody the idea that Little Island is a whimsical place. And so it is where food and beverage is centered. It's where you can hang out. It's where you can tell your party, hey, meet me a little island, I'll be in the playground. And there's some shade structures there. There is some whimsical elements to it. There are, if you look at the deck here, you can't really see. Actually, right in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see some of these dark bricks. They evoke schools of fishes in the water. And we have a partner, a toy maker called Richter. They do outdoor tours. I'm sure somebody on this call knows about them. They've made some amazing things for us, including some dance chimes, which are very nearby. If you were able to walk into this picture and just keep going straight toward the horizon, you'd a little bit to the left, you'd hit our dance chimes, which I'd love to have them in my foyer. You jump up and down and they make beautiful sounds. And there are a couple of other toys around in the park, but no, much chagrin, the playground is not a playground.
So, no, that's good. And, I was watching a video earlier because I was so interested in the park, and I did see I guess you call them chimes. They step on them and they make music.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
That was really cool. I'd like to take a look at that and see if we can incorporate those in our parks. But so a question about the playground, just going a little bit further. Is there anything, if you could change anything about the park, Michael, what would that be? Just anything.
Shade.
Shade.
I think one thing we learned this year is that, yes, summer is hot. And there were times on the island where it was hard for visitors to enjoy themselves because there were not enough shade available. So that is really, I think, coming out of year one, the thing that I'm most interested in addressing. And we are thinking about how we can do that. We're not going to be able to fix everything, but moments in which it's 130 degrees need more shade.
Well, Michael, if it makes you feel any better, we're all looking at more shade structures in our parks because the heat is definitely a factor.
Yeah.
Do you have any, speaking of shade structures, are there any water features in the park just to cool?
Yeah, surrounded by water, but there are no water features.
Okay.
And I think, that might be considered a flaw, just as the 7-year-olds do not dig the idea of a playground that doesn't have playground equipment. There's water everywhere and no water feature. I think that it is about, there's a sense of wonder in the park that is about the views, I think.
Great.
The fact that you can see things from an angle that you've never seen them before. And that the sky looks bigger.
Yes. Well, that's when you mentioned earlier that, there's, and I read this in their website that the foundation has funded maintenance for the next 20 years, which is amazing. Because a lot of times when you get a new park, the funding for long-term life cycle replacement and ongoing maintenance is just not there. Do you guys have any long-term future plans for this park post 20 years? Do you ever plan to expand the park? Or perhaps somebody asked a question about having water taxis bring visitors into the park from across the Hudson.
That sounds exciting. I'm anything for using the water more. I think what's going to happen, I think, is that once Hudson River Park is done, there's going to, obviously, you go back to the beginning in terms of making sure that it can stay gorgeous, the whole 4.5 miles. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm going to punt on this question and go back to a question and answer that was given to Signe in a recent presentation at Pratt. And they were talking about the plantings and how complicated it was. And in fact, we only had 2 gardeners, oh my, wow. So the experts were just agog over that idea. And what would happen if you had to reduce the level of care, or the standard of care had to change because that might happen. And what Signe said, without missing a beat, was that, of course, that's a possibility, but that it stands on its own. The trees will, they're not going anywhere, and they're magnificent. The architecture and the way it works, I mean, it's an art project, so that's not going away. And then she has strategically placed these grasses. And if you can't see them in any of these pictures, but wow, in the fall, it was just amazing. These grasses, which, of course, there are a zillion varieties of grasses. They're they're interesting in their own right too, and beautiful. So she didn't have any regret about going big, thinking that it might be reduced, because I think that the bones are good, right? At its heart, and this is true in both the physical and in the theoretical or the vision space of Little Island, the heart is really strong here. The bones of this project are really strong. It's beautiful without, even if you had to pull back for maintenance, it's beautiful. And then the mission itself, the idea that it's for everyone. And in a time where we're talking about equity, diversity, and inclusion, we're talking about accessibility, we put all of that in one bucket because it's about love. So this park is an expression of love at its purest form. It's not sentimental, but this is an act of love. And it means it's not for us, it's for you, it's for everyone. And we're just its protectors, we're just its stewards.
Great. So I got a really interesting question. It's about the arts. And
Yes.
you guys certainly do a lot. I mean, I look at the venue of everything you've done out there. My goodness, you've really covered the gamut. But this individual says, I think it's great to think about the experience visitors have when they visit public parks. Public parks often lack art and music because many jurisdictions struggle to define art programs, music programs, and those types of things. So how do you guys work through that as you're programming for the future?
Everyone all the time. Everyone all the time means you're never saying, you're trying to never say no, and you're trying to hit the middle without being boring. So it's a great question. Was it fun is a fantastic question. And if you had to throw the rest of them out, that would be a good one. We're trying to make sure that everyone here can enjoy themselves. So you're not going to find certain kinds of work on Little Island. You're going to find specific kinds of work on Little Island. You're going to find things that people can access, that people can enter, that people don't come in homogenous little boxes. So like, I used to work in Brooklyn, and it's very evocative at a museum in which there were a lot of families. So you would have a little baby, and you have the middle schooler, and then you have the teenager, a little higher, and then you have the parents. You have to entertain them all. You have to give them all a reason to stay, or you've ruined family day. So we got to, you don't want the teenager to be like, oh, this is boring. So you've got to think about things that really hit the middle of a human being. And the whole thing the whole park breathes together to make that happen. So this picture is a great example. If you're in the AMP and you're watching something and it's not for you, you can still have an amazing experience because it's gorgeous, right? So there's nothing that's getting in our way, rather other than us picking something or curating something that says, no, this is not for, and then pick a demographic. Everything is for everybody, within reason. And then, of course, there are limitations to that. But Looney Tunes is a great example. I mean, everybody knows that when you're watching Bugs Bunny, children love it, but there's always something for an adult. And that theory, that way of working goes a long way.
Great. Yeah, there is adult humor behind Bugs Bunny. I did notice that. So that's a great point. So a question, does the park staff manage the maintenance, or do you guys outsource that to the foundation?
We are a tenant of Hudson River Park, so we have a strong relationship back and forth, leadership and on the ground with our colleagues at Hudson River Park. They have a way of doing maintenance. Everything in our space is bespoke. We use an outside contractor to maintain our gardens. We have a horticulture. We have a lead of horticulture on our team, and we have a layer that is inside our organization that is very small. I said we have 2 gardeners this year, full-time gardeners. And I'm sure people are looking at the diversity of the island. I think all the experts go like, wow, that's amazing. I mean, that's really, that's a stretch. But to build our capacity, we do that through contracts.
So I have a question about food services. Do you guys bring food services in? I mean,
Same relationship. So we have a vendor.
Okay.
Who does that, but they're doing it, and because for visitors don't know that you're a vendor, right? So that's the gig there, is having strong relationships with our vendors in which the brand is maintained. And when I talk about the brand, I don't do that in a way that is, I do that authentically. People will laugh at us. The love, how do you keep that that realness. You know, we want our visitors to feel cared for and welcome in every moment from every angle. And it's everybody's job to represent hospitality in Little Island. It's my job to do it. It is the gardener's job to do it. It is the production team's job to do it. Everybody has to be able to answer that question of like, where's the bathroom and what's happening right now with joy.
So if I wanted to have a wedding there or a bar mitzvah or a birthday party, no, absolutely none of that.
You can certainly do whatever you would do in a public park, but the
Okay.
minute you start to get into a spot in which you are starting to claim space in a way that means that you know you own that, then that's inappropriate. So we don't do private events, and that causes some struggle because I really would love to be able to say yes to organizations for us to be in their backyard, and that is one of our missions this year. Last year we hosted one graduation from a public school. This year I'd like to figure out how we can do more of that, but that is really a logistical question. But when it comes to things like, hey, I'd like to have a birthday party for my kids, and I have been asked that, like, I got a lot of money, I'd like to have a birthday party for my kids. No, we don't do that. You can come and have an event on Little Island, right? The same way you would do in any park. Let's go to the park and have your birthday party. And you can certainly do that. And we will help you if you are confused about how to do that in public. We'll do some rule education and joyfully help you understand how to do that and share the space with all of your neighbors, because that's what public space is about.
Somebody asked a question about flooding. You're sitting pretty high off the water. Is there any issue about flooding or mitigating any of that?
I am certain that climate change is going to cause us some issues in the future because it's going to affect everybody. And to a level that we don't know. But the planners and the builders were thinking about that and made decisions to address it. So one of those is that as I said, the island is higher than the shore. So it's about 15 feet above the line. And there's this gentle rise in the bridges. And yeah, I don't even think people notice that, Little Island is elevated. I mean, it kind of feels like the floor is right where you're standing on the shore, but it's not. It's definitely higher. And so right there, you got one choice. Also, the island drains. So not just for the water rising from below, but water coming from above in terms of rainwater, et cetera. It's benefits from a lot of new advancements in technology that of course I'm not savvy to. I can only say that phrase, but I know that it drains and that they had a lot of thinking about it.
So another question is on the acoustics of the park. Do you guys pipe in music, background music, to stroll through?
We do not pipe in like music. No, we do not do that. We do, however, have a lighting and sound designer whose job is to make sure that the island is lit beautifully during, and we had a company that worked with us to do that in the initial, to set the initial light plot. But the island is well lit. It shows itself off at night in an amazing way, and that's all intentional. And the sound of Little Island, as a community person, of course, one of the things that I was concerned with, because community is rightfully concerned with, is this going to disturb us? Or is that music going to bleed across the highway and keep me up at night? And I said that our sound design not only protects the community, but it protects the spaces, and that we can have things happening in the AMPH and in the GLADE and the playground all at the same time without so much bleed that it's impossible to enjoy it. So everything on Little Island is intentional. There's a lot of care in every decision.
Michael, this has been great. I really want to thank you so much. And we have just a few minutes left, and I wanted to see if you had any closing remarks you wanted to make. But one more question. If we have folks that want to come visit the park, what is the best time to come visit Little Island?
I like it in the mornings.
Okay.
I think that there's something about the being able to enjoy the beauty of it with fewer people. You can always guarantee in the early morning that no matter what time of year, we won't be doing timed entry. And you can have the southwest overlook to yourself. It is the highest point on the island. It is a breathtaking view. But early morning is when I go. Alternately, if you can't do that, hit it at sunset. Check Google, check when the sun is going down, and get to the AMPH and get a lemonade and sit in the AMPH. You'll feel better.
Great. That's fantastic. Well, Michael, I want to thank you again. We are ending just about a few minutes before the hour, and I applaud you and your team for a wonderful job. I cannot wait to get out there and see it and experience it, and that's what I'm going to truly do, is experience it. It sounds like that's how you guys really designed and modeled this park. And I want to thank you for your time today, and the group certainly thanks you as well. And from Montgomery Parks, we hope you have a great holiday.
Thank you. I think the work you do is really important, and I'm grateful for the chance to share some of what we're exploring.
Great. And for the folks out there who have not signed off yet, our next speaker series is set for January 12th, when we will be joined by the National Parks and Rec Association, NRPA, Vice President of Member Services, to look at the trends in parks and recreation for 2022. And I think we can look to Michael for some of those trends, because I think you've hit the nail on the head. Take care, everybody.